They cornered me in my own kitchen, blocking the doorway like prison guards, and that's when Tiffany smiled her sweetest smile and said, "Old lottery winners have accidents all the time, very easy targets." Kevin nodded along like a loyal puppy, and I felt my blood pressure spike as I realized my own son was threatening me for money. But here's what they didn't know. I'd been recording everything for weeks, building a case that would destroy their lives. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Let me back up and tell you how we got here. 6 months ago, I was Dorothy Williams, 72-year-old widow living in what I thought was a loving home, with my son Kevin and his wife Tiffany in Colorado Springs. I'd moved in 2 years earlier after my Harold passed, believing I was helping family while they helped me through grief. Kevin manages a struggling car dealership, one of those guys who learned to smile through financial pressure but never learned to manage money. At 45, he still has that boyish charm that once fooled me into thinking he'd inherited his father's integrity. Tiffany, 38, works in pharmaceutical sales with the kind of polished desperation that screams, keeping up appearances while drowning in debt. Designer everything bought on credit, perfectly maintained image hiding, crushing financial anxiety. Their kids, Tyler and Emma, are genuinely good kids, caught between loving their grandmother and staying loyal to parents who were slowly poisoning our family dynamic. Tyler's 16, working part-time to save for college because his parents had already spent his college fund. Emma's 13, wise beyond her years and often the only one who treated me like a real person. The first crack in my illusion came 4 months ago. I'd gotten up for water around midnight and overheard Kevin and Tiffany in their bedroom. Voices hushed but urgent. "We can't keep carrying her," Tiffany was saying. "The extra groceries, utilities, everything. We're barely covering our own expenses. She's my mother, Tiff. She's a financial burden we can't afford. Cedar Grove Nursing Home has payment plans. Medicare would cover most of it." I stood frozen in the hallway, listening to them discuss warehousing me like unwanted furniture. Mom would never agree to a nursing home. Mom doesn't have to agree. We get power of attorney, declare her mentally declining, and make the decision for her own good. The casual cruelty took my breath away. These weren't desperate people making impossible choices. They were calculating individuals planning to steal my freedom for their convenience. That's when I started paying attention. Really paying attention. Over the following weeks, I noticed things I'd been too trusting to see before. How they spoke about me like I wasn't there. How Tiffany calculated my costs down to individual meals. How Kevin increasingly avoided being alone with me, letting his wife handle the emotional labor of pretending to care. I also discovered their real financial situation by accidentally seeing bank statements left on Kevin's desk. They weren't just struggling, they were drowning. $47,000 in credit card debt. 3 months behind on the mortgage. Car payments they couldn't afford on vehicles bought to maintain their image. They needed money desperately, and I was their biggest obstacle to restructuring their finances. 2 months ago, I bought a lottery ticket. Not from desperation, from defiance. I'd been feeling increasingly unwelcome in their home, increasingly aware that they saw me as expendable, and something in me rebelled. $5 felt like the ultimate middle finger to people who were counting my grocery costs. $127 million. $127 million. When those numbers hit, I sat in that convenience store parking lot for 20 minutes. Mind racing, not with joy, but with strategic possibilities. I now had power, real power, and the question was how to use it. Most people would have moved out immediately, cut ties, started fresh. But I wanted something more valuable than escape. I wanted justice. I wanted the world to see exactly who Kevin and Tiffany really were underneath their respectable facade. That's when I contacted Daniel Rodriguez, an investigative journalist I'd seen on a local news segment about elder abuse. Our meeting at a downtown coffee shop changed everything. "Mrs. Williams," Daniel said after I explained my situation, "what you're describing is textbook financial elder abuse. The nursing home threats, the power of attorney discussions, this is criminal behavior. Can you document it? With your permission, absolutely. Hidden cameras, audio equipment. But I have to warn you, this could get ugly fast once they find out about the money." I smiled for the first time in months. "Mr. Rodriguez, ugly is exactly what I'm hoping for. The equipment installation took place while Kevin and Tiffany were at work and the kids were at school. Daniel's team was professional, discreet, and thorough. Cameras hidden in decorative objects, audio devices sensitive enough to pick up whispered conversations from the next room. Everything records to encrypted drives, Daniel explained. We'll document their behavior for several weeks, then reveal your lottery winnings to see how they respond to you having money. The first test came sooner than expected. That evening, Kevin approached me while I was reading in the living room. Mom, we need to discuss your living arrangements. I looked up, knowing the hidden camera in the bookshelf was capturing his serious expression. What about them, honey? Tiffany appeared, armed with printed documents. We've been researching senior living communities. Some really nice places with people your own age. Senior living communities. The euphemism made my skin crawl. I'm comfortable here, I said simply. But are you really? Tiffany sat down, her tone syrupy with false concern. You spend so much time alone. Wouldn't you be happier somewhere with activities, social opportunities? I studied her face, this woman who was essentially selling me on my own exile. I have social opportunities. I have my family. Kevin shifted uncomfortably. Mom, that's the thing. Tiffany and I are entering a demanding phase of our careers. I'm being considered for regional manager, which means longer hours, more travel. And I might be transferring to the Denver office, Tiffany added seamlessly. The commute would be brutal, and we'd need help with the kids after school. Help with the kids after school. I'd been providing that help for 2 years, but apparently it was no longer valuable enough to justify my presence. What exactly are you saying? I asked, though I knew perfectly well. We think it would be better for everyone if you had your own place, Kevin said. More independence for you, more space for us to handle our changing situation. More space, like I was overcrowding their lives. Have you looked at any specific places? I asked. Tiffany brightened, thinking she was making progress. Cedar Grove has a beautiful facility about 20 minutes from here. We could visit every week. Every week. Down from every day. What would something like that cost? It's quite reasonable, Tiffany said, though she avoided giving actual numbers. There are payment plans, and Medicare covers a significant portion, but not all of it. Never all of it. I nodded thoughtfully. Let me think about it. After they left the room, I sat alone with my book, knowing every word had been recorded. Tomorrow, I would call the lottery office and begin the next phase of my plan. That night, I heard them talking again through the thin walls. She's not taking the hint, Tiffany said. We need to be more direct. Give her time to adjust to the idea. Kevin, we don't have time. The mortgage payment is due in 2 weeks and we're already behind. We need that room to generate rental income, or we need her out so we can downsize. Rental income. They wanted to rent out my room to strangers. What if she just refuses to go? Kevin asked. Then we make the decision for her. She's 72, Kevin. Who's going to question our judgment about what's best for our elderly mother? Our elderly mother, not his mother, theirs, like I was community property to be managed. The next morning I drove to the lottery office with a smile on my face for the first time in months. Mrs. Williams, congratulations, Sarah from the Lottery Commission said. How would you like to proceed with your winnings? I'd spent weeks planning this conversation. I want the lump sum transferred to a private account. No publicity, no press releases. The lump sum, after federal and state taxes, will be approximately $63.4 million. $63 million. More than enough to buy justice. There's something else, I continued. I'm working with a journalist on a story about elder abuse. I need the money available but untouched until a specific date. Within days, Dorothy Williams had $63.4 million sitting untouched in First National Bank. But Kevin and Tiffany still saw me as their impoverished burden. The pressure escalated quickly. Mom, did you call Cedar Grove yet? Kevin asked 3 days later during dinner. I've been thinking about what you said, I replied carefully. About needing space. Tiffany perked up. And? I understand your position, but I'm not ready to make such a big change. The temperature in the room dropped perceptibly. Mom, we're trying to be patient, Kevin said. But this isn't really a request anymore. Not a request. An ultimatum. What does that mean exactly? Tiffany took over, her sales training evident. It means we've already spoken to Cedar Grove about availability. They have an opening next month, and we've put down a deposit. They'd put down a deposit on my exile without my consent. You had no right to do that, I said quietly. We have every right, Tiffany snapped, her mask slipping. You're living in our house, using our resources. If you want to stay, you need to start contributing more than the token amount you pay now. Token amount? I paid $800 a month, more than fair for a single room. How much more? I asked. Kevin and Tiffany exchanged a look. They'd clearly discussed this. $2,000 a month, Kevin said. That would cover your actual costs, plus a fair share of utilities and common areas. $2,000 a month. My Social Security was only $1,147. They knew that. You know I can't afford that, I said. Then Cedar Grove it is, Tiffany said with false cheerfulness. The good news is that Medicare covers most of the cost, and you'll have people your own age to socialize with. That night, I called Daniel. It's time for phase 2. Are you sure you're ready for this? I've been ready for months. The next morning, Margaret, my friend from the senior center, called the house, pretending to be from Publishers Clearinghouse. Tyler answered, which was perfect. Is Mrs. Dorothy Williams there? Margaret asked in her most official voice. Grandma, Tyler yelled. Phone for you. I took my time getting to the phone, making sure both Kevin and Tiffany could hear. Hello, I said, sounding confused. Mrs. Williams, this is Janet from Publishers Clearinghouse. I'm calling about your recent sweepstakes entry. The conversation played out exactly as planned. By the time I hung up, claiming to be skeptical about winning $25,000 plus $1,000 a week for life, Tyler was practically vibrating with excitement. Grandma, you might be rich, he announced as his parents walked in from work. I played my part perfectly, confused, doubtful, overwhelmed by the possibility. But I could see the wheels turning in Kevin and Tiffany's heads. Suddenly, the woman they'd been trying to warehouse was potentially valuable again. The transformation was immediate and nauseating. Mom, that's incredible news, Kevin beamed, his enthusiasm completely fabricated. What exactly did they say? Something about $25,000 immediately and $1,000 every week after that, I replied, maintaining my confused elderly act. But it's probably a scam, right? Not necessarily, Tiffany said, suddenly the picture of concern. Publishers Clearinghouse is legitimate. Maybe we should look into this more carefully. Look into this. Translation. Figure out how to get control of the money. I don't know, I continued. It seems too good to be true. These things do happen. Mom, Kevin assured me. Remember the Hendersons down the street? They won $50,000 in a radio contest 2 years ago. The Hendersons had won $500, not $50,000, but Kevin was already rewriting history to support his narrative. What are you thinking of doing with the money? Tiffany asked, her tone carefully casual. I hadn't thought about it, I lied. I suppose I should pay you back for everything you've spent on me. Their eyes lit up like Christmas morning. Mom, that's very thoughtful, Kevin said. But family helps family. You don't owe us anything. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. 24 hours ago, they were demanding $2,000 a month or threatening to warehouse me. Now that I might have money, suddenly, I didn't owe them anything. But maybe, Tiffany added carefully, we could help you manage it. Large sums of money can be overwhelming for someone who's never dealt with significant finances. Someone who's never dealt with significant finances. Like I was too stupid to understand money. That's very kind, I said, but I think I can handle $1,000 a week. Of course you can, Kevin said hastily. But there are tax implications, investment opportunities. We just want to make sure you're protected. Protected from what? Making my own decisions? That evening, I heard them talking again. Their whispered conversations now seeming less private since I knew they were being recorded. She's being naive about this, Tiffany said. Elderly people are prime targets for financial scams. She needs guidance. What kind of guidance? A joint account, maybe, or power of attorney for financial decisions, just to protect her. Power of attorney. The same thing they discussed months ago when they thought I was broke. I don't know, Tiff. That seems... Kevin, she's 72 years old, and about to have access to over $500,000 over the next 10 years. Do you really think she's capable of managing that responsibly? Apparently. I was too old and incompetent to manage my own money, but still young and capable enough to be kicked out and forced to manage my own living arrangements. We need to be careful, Kevin said. We don't want her to think we're after her money. Of course we're not after her money, Tiffany replied. We're protecting her from making mistakes that could hurt the whole family. Protecting the whole family. Like my financial decisions were somehow their responsibility. I lay in bed that night, listening to them plot my financial subjugation, and felt a satisfaction I hadn't experienced in years. Every word was being recorded, every manipulative conversation, every plan to control me, every greedy calculation was being documented by Daniel's equipment. Tomorrow, they would make their move, and I would be ready. The confrontation came exactly as I expected. I was making breakfast when they appeared in the kitchen like a coordinated assault team. Mom, we need to talk about your situation, Kevin began. What situation? I asked, continuing to scramble eggs. Your windfall, Tiffany said, settling onto a bar stool like she was prepared for a long negotiation. We're concerned about your safety. I looked up with carefully manufactured confusion. My safety. Elderly people with sudden wealth are often targeted by criminals, Kevin explained, his tone patronizingly gentle. Scam artists, financial predators, even people who might try to take advantage of your generous nature. That sounds terrible, I said. What should I do? They exchanged that married couple look, the one that meant they'd rehearsed this conversation. We think you should let us help you manage the money, Tiffany said. Nothing drastic. Just set up a joint account so we can monitor for any suspicious activity. Monitor suspicious activity, I repeated. Like what? Unusual withdrawals, investment schemes that seem too good to be true, people trying to befriend you for financial gain, Kevin listed. People trying to befriend me for financial gain. The irony was suffocating. But it's my money, I said, as if the concept was just occurring to me. Of course it is, Kevin said hastily. We're not trying to control it. We just want to protect it. Protect it from what? Tiffany's patience was already wearing thin. From you making impulsive decisions that you might regret later. Impulsive decisions like refusing to be controlled by them. I don't think I'm impulsive, I said mildly. Mom, no offense, but you're not experienced with this kind of money, Kevin said. There are tax implications, investment strategies, legal considerations. It can be overwhelming. Overwhelming for someone my age, he meant. What exactly are you proposing? I asked. A joint checking account where the money gets deposited, Tiffany said. We'd all have access, but any major expenditures would be discussed as a family. Discussed as a family. Code for approved by them. And what would you consider a major expenditure? Anything over, say, $500, Kevin suggested. That gives you plenty of flexibility for day-to-day expenses while ensuring the bulk of the money is protected. $500. They wanted to put me on a $500 allowance from my own money. That seems reasonable, I said slowly, watching their faces light up with greedy satisfaction. We're also thinking, Tiffany added, that since you'll be staying here long-term now, we should formalize the arrangement. Maybe $1,500 a month for room and board? That's much less than Cedar Grove would have cost. $1,500 a month from my own winnings to live in their house. Plus whatever they plan to siphon from the joint account for family expenses. And the rest of the money? I asked. We'd invest it conservatively, Kevin said. Build your nest egg for the future. Build my nest egg by giving them control of it. What do you think? Tiffany asked, her sales smile at full wattage. I pretended to consider this generous offer to steal my money while charging me rent to live in their house. It sounds like you've put a lot of thought into this, I said finally. We just want what's best for you, Mom. And what if I don't want to put the money in a joint account? The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Well, Kevin said carefully, that would be your choice, but it would make us very worried about your judgment. Your judgment. The first hint of the threat to come. Worried how? Tiffany leaned forward, her voice honey-sweet with malice. Dorothy. Elderly people who suddenly acquire wealth and then start making erratic financial decisions. Well, sometimes family members have to step in to protect them. Step in to protect them. Power of attorney by force. I see, I said. And if I agreed to the joint account? Then we'd all be comfortable knowing your money was safe, Kevin said. Safe from me, he meant. That night, I heard their true feelings through the walls. She's going to fight us on this, Tiffany said. I could see it in her eyes. Maybe she'll come around. And if she doesn't? Kevin, this is over $500,000 we're talking about. Do you want to watch your mother blow it all on shopping channels and charity scams? I wasn't buying anything from shopping channels or giving money to charity scams. But the truth wasn't relevant to their narrative. What are you suggesting? Kevin asked. I'm suggesting that old people with lots of cash become targets. And sometimes, accidents happen to targets. There it was. The threat I'd been waiting for. Tiffany, you can't be serious. I'm serious about protecting our family's future. That money could pay off our debts, secure the kids' college funds, give us the life we deserve. Are we supposed to just watch her waste it because we're too polite to take control? Our family's future. My money had somehow become their inheritance. The conversation that would destroy them was still to come. The final confrontation happened exactly 1 week later. I was making my morning coffee when they surrounded me in the kitchen. Kevin blocking the doorway, Tiffany positioning herself between me and the phone. We need to settle this money situation today, Tiffany announced. What's to settle? I asked. You've been avoiding the conversation about the joint account, Kevin said. We need a decision. I've been thinking about it. For a week, Tiffany snapped, her patience finally exhausted. How long does it take to make a simple decision? A simple decision. The masks came off completely. Mom, that's not really your choice anymore, Kevin said, his voice hardening. We've been patient, but your refusal to accept help is concerning. Concerning to whom? To us, Tiffany said. To anyone who cares about your well-being. Elderly people who become paranoid about money management are showing signs of cognitive decline. Cognitive decline. The nuclear option. I'm not paranoid, I protested. I just want to control my own money. That's exactly what someone with impaired judgment would say, Tiffany replied smoothly. Dorothy, we've been documenting your erratic behavior for weeks. The refusal to move to appropriate senior housing, the paranoia about family members, the inability to make rational financial decisions. Documenting my erratic behavior. They'd been building a case against my competence. What kind of documentation? I asked, though I already knew. Kevin produced a folder. Emails to your doctor about your increasing confusion. Notes about your memory lapses. Photographs of your medication mistakes. Medication mistakes? I'd never made any medication mistakes. We've also spoken to an attorney about emergency conservatorship procedures, Tiffany added. In cases where elderly people are at risk of financial exploitation or self-harm through poor judgment, family members can step in immediately. They'd consulted an attorney about stealing my autonomy. You can't do that, I whispered. We don't want to, Kevin said, his voice soft with fake regret. But if you force our hand by refusing reasonable assistance, like theft was a favor they were doing me. What exactly do you want? I asked. Joint account with shared access, Tiffany listed. Monthly allowance of $500 for personal expenses. All major financial decisions made as a family. And if I agree, then you stay here. We manage your money responsibly and everyone's happy. And if I don't? Kevin and Tiffany exchanged that look again, the one that meant I was about to hear something terrible. Then we're forced to conclude that you're not competent to manage your affairs, Kevin said. We'd file for emergency conservatorship and have you evaluated by medical professionals. Medical professionals they'd already primed with their documentation of my decline. You'd have me declared incompetent? We'd have you declared protected, Tiffany corrected. From your own poor judgment and from people who might take advantage of you. People like them, she meant, though she'd never admit it. This is extortion, I said quietly. This is family intervention, Tiffany replied. Dorothy, you need to understand something. Old lottery winners have accidents all the time. Very easy targets. We're trying to prevent you from becoming a statistic. There it was. The threat I'd been waiting 6 weeks to hear. Kevin looked uncomfortable but didn't contradict his wife. So what's it going to be? Tiffany continued. Cooperative family money management? Or do we have to make these decisions for you? I looked at both of them. my son and his wife, standing in my kitchen, threatening to steal my money and my freedom if I didn't submit willingly. And then I smiled. "Did you get that?" I asked, looking directly at the camera hidden in the decorative bowl on the counter. Their faces went white as I continued, "Because Daniel Rodriguez and his documentary crew have been recording everything for the past 6 weeks, and we now have comprehensive evidence of your plans to commit financial elder abuse, extortion, and conspiracy." The silence that followed was the sweetest sound I'd ever heard. "What are you talking about?" Kevin's voice cracked. I walked over to the bowl and lifted it, revealing the tiny camera underneath. "This one's been here since the day after you first mentioned Cedar Grove. There are 5 others throughout the house, plus audio equipment that's been recording your late-night planning sessions." Tiffany was staring at the camera like it was a poisonous snake. "You can't! This is illegal!" "Colorado is a one-party consent state," I explained cheerfully. "As long as one person in the conversation knows about the recording, that would be me, it's perfectly legal." "How long?" Kevin whispered. 6 weeks of documentation. Your threats to have me declared incompetent, your plans to steal my money through fake conservatorship, your accidental comment about lottery winners having accidents." I looked directly at Tiffany. "That last part is going to be particularly interesting to prosecutors." The look of dawning horror on their faces was worth every moment of the past 6 weeks of abuse. But the real revelation was still to come. The silence in my kitchen was deafening. Kevin's face had gone gray, while Tiffany looked like she might collapse. Both of them stared at the tiny camera I'd revealed, as if it might suddenly explode. 6 weeks? Kevin's voice was barely a whisper. "You've been recording us for 6 weeks? Every conversation, every threat, every plan to steal my autonomy and my money," I confirmed, "including last night's discussion about having me declared incompetent and your charming wife's comment about accidents happening to lottery winners." Tiffany found her voice. "This is entrapment. You tricked us." "I documented you," I corrected. "There's a difference. Entrapment is when law enforcement tricks someone into committing a crime they wouldn't normally commit. I simply recorded you being yourselves." Daniel Rodriguez stepped out from the pantry where he'd been monitoring the equipment. Kevin and Tiffany spun around like cornered animals. "Daniel Rodriguez, investigative journalist," he introduced himself calmly. "I've been documenting elder abuse cases for the past 3 years. Mrs. Williams contacted me after overhearing your initial conversations about power of attorney in nursing homes." "You can't use this," Kevin said desperately. "We're family. This is a private matter." "Financial elder abuse is never a private matter," Daniel replied, adjusting his equipment. "It's a federal crime, especially when it involves threats of violence." Tiffany was crying now, though whether from fear or anger was unclear. "We never meant any of it. We were just frustrated, stressed about money." "Stressed enough to threaten your mother-in-law's life?" Daniel asked matter-of-factly. "That was taken out of context. What context makes old lottery winners have accidents all the time acceptable?" I asked. She had no answer for that. Kevin sank into a kitchen chair, his head in his hands. "Mom, you don't understand. We owe $47,000 on credit cards. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. The dealership is cutting commissions by 30%. We're drowning." For the first time in weeks, my son sounded genuinely human instead of calculating. "But financial pressure didn't excuse planning to steal from your mother." "So you decided the solution was to rob me?" "We didn't think of it as robbing," Kevin said quietly. We thought we were protecting you from making mistakes. By taking control of my money and charging me rent to live in your house." "The room and board thing was Tiffany's idea," Kevin said, throwing his wife under the bus with practiced ease. Tiffany's tears stopped abruptly. "Don't you dare blame this on me, Kevin. You were the one who said your mother owed us for 2 years of support. Because you calculated every grocery bill and utility payment. Because we can't afford to support another person." I watched them turn on each other and felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness. This was what financial stress had done to my family, turned them into predators willing to devour anyone, including me. "There's something else you should know," I said quietly. Both of them looked at me with expressions of dread. "The Publishers Clearinghouse call was fake. I never won $25,000 and $1,000 a week." "What?" Tiffany's voice cracked. I reached into my jewelry box and pulled out the bank statement I'd been saving for this moment. I won the Powerball lottery 4 months ago. After taxes, I have $63.4 million in my account. The sound Kevin made wasn't entirely human. Tiffany grabbed the counter to keep from falling. $63 million, I continued. Kevin whispered. If you had that kind of money, why didn't you just leave? Because I wanted the world to see who you really are. I wanted documentation of how my own family treated me when they thought I was vulnerable. And I wanted to make sure this never happens to another elderly person. Daniel was still filming, capturing their reactions. This footage would become part of a documentary that would air in 6 months, after legal proceedings were complete. What happens now? Tiffany asked. Now you live with the consequences of your choices, I replied. The immediate aftermath was chaos. Kevin and Tiffany spent the rest of that day frantically calling lawyers, trying to understand their legal exposure. Daniel interviewed them both on camera, giving them a chance to explain their actions. Kevin's interview was painful to watch. My son, stripped of his sales charm and forced to confront his behavior, looked like a broken man. I never wanted it to go this far, he said. The money stress, the pressure from Tiffany, the feeling that Mom didn't appreciate what we were doing for her. It just snowballed. When did you first discuss taking control of her finances? Daniel asked. Kevin was quiet for a long moment. About 6 months ago. We were fighting about the mortgage payment, and Tiff said Mom should be contributing more. Then she said maybe Mom wasn't capable of making good decisions about money. Did you believe that? I wanted to believe it because it made things easier. If Mom wasn't competent, then we could make decisions for her own good. Tiffany's interview was more defensive. She maintained that everything they'd done was motivated by genuine concern for my welfare, though she couldn't explain how charging me rent from my own money constituted care. Dorothy is 72 years old, she said. Elderly people with sudden wealth are vulnerable to scams, poor decisions. We were trying to protect her. By threatening her with involuntary commitment if she didn't comply? That was a last resort. We hoped she'd see reason. And the comment about lottery winners having accidents? Tiffany's composure cracked. I was angry. People say things when they're angry. Do you understand that threatening to harm an elderly person for financial gain is a felony? She started crying again. The children's reactions were heartbreaking. Tyler, 16 and old enough to understand the implications, was angry at everyone. His parents for their greed. Me for the deception, the situation for existing at all. Why couldn't you just work it out as a family? He asked me that evening. Because your parents weren't treating me as family, I replied. They were treating me as a financial obstacle to be eliminated. Emma, 13 and still trying to process the adult complexities, asked the question that cut deepest. Are you really never coming back, Grandma? I hugged her tightly. Sweetheart, I'm moving to a different house, but I'm not disappearing. You can visit me anytime you want. But it won't be the same. She was right. Nothing would ever be the same. Over the following days, I worked with a realtor to find a new home. Not the Wilson place I'd impulsively mentioned during our confrontation. That was dramatic flair for the cameras. Instead, I found a modest 3-bedroom house about 10 minutes away. Big enough for grandchildren to visit, small enough for one person to manage comfortably. The purchase process took 6 weeks. Normal time frame for real estate transactions, despite what movies suggest. During that time, I stayed in a hotel, giving Kevin and Tiffany space to process what had happened while maintaining boundaries for my own protection. Daniel's preliminary footage was compelling enough to attract interest from several networks. We ultimately signed with Channel 9 for a 1-hour documentary special, with the understanding that the footage wouldn't air until after any legal proceedings were resolved. The legal proceedings began 2 months later. Detective Sarah Martinez from the Colorado Springs Police Department's Financial Crimes Unit contacted me in early October. A serious woman in her 40s, she'd spent 15 years investigating elder abuse cases. Mrs. Williams, I've reviewed the footage provided by Mr. Rodriguez. There's sufficient evidence for criminal charges, but I need to ask, do you want to press charges against your own son and daughter-in-law? It was the question I'd been dreading. Detective, if Kevin and Tiffany had succeeded in their plan, what would have happened to me? Based on their recorded conversations, They would have filed for emergency conservatorship had you declared incompetent, gained control of your finances, and likely placed you in a nursing facility against your will. And I would have had any recourse? Once someone is declared incompetent, challenging that determination is extremely difficult. You would have been legally powerless. That answered my question. File the charges. The indictment came down 3 weeks later. Kevin was charged with conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse and making false statements to obtain conservatorship. Tiffany faced the same charges plus criminal threats against an elderly person for her comment about accidents. The local news coverage was extensive but respectful. The story had all the elements that attract media attention: family betrayal, hidden cameras, dramatic revelations. But the reporters focused on the broader issue of elder abuse rather than sensationalizing our family drama. Kevin and Tiffany's lives unraveled quickly. Kevin's dealership terminated him immediately. They couldn't have someone facing elder abuse charges representing their business. Tiffany's pharmaceutical company put her on unpaid administrative leave, pending the outcome of the criminal case. Their friends distanced themselves. Neighbors who had once been warm became coldly polite. Tyler and Emma faced whispered conversations at school about their parents being on the news for threatening their grandmother. I felt genuinely sorry for the children. None of this was their fault, and they were paying the price for their parents' choices. That's why I approached them directly one evening in early November. I found Tyler working at the grocery store where he'd gotten a part-time job to help with household expenses. "Hi, sweetheart," I said quietly. He looked around nervously, as if being seen with me might cause more problems. "Hi, Grandma. How are you doing? How do you think I'm doing?" The anger in his voice was sharp but understandable. "My parents might go to prison. We're probably going to lose the house, and everyone at school knows about it because it was on the news. I'm sorry you're going through this. Are you?" His eyes challenged me. "Because it seems like you planned all of this." It was a fair accusation. I had planned it, in a sense. "Tyler, let me ask you something. If someone was planning to steal your college fund and have you declared incompetent so they could control your life, what would you do?" "They're not strangers." "Grandma, they're my parents. They love you." "Do they?" "Because people who love you don't plot to warehouse you in a nursing home and steal your money." Tyler was quiet for a moment. "Dad says they were just trying to protect you." "From what?" He couldn't answer that. "Tyler, I want you to understand something. The money I won, I was planning to share it with your family. College funds for you and Emma, paying off your parents' debts, maybe even helping them buy a bigger house." His eyes widened. "Really? Really? If they had just been patient and kind, they could have had everything they wanted. Instead, they chose to be cruel and greedy. How much would you have given them?" "Probably around $2 million. Tyler staggered slightly. $2 million? And they threw that away by trying to steal from you? Greed makes people stupid, sweetheart. Your parents could have been millionaires if they'd just treated me with basic respect." That conversation changed something in Tyler. Over the following weeks, he began asking his parents harder questions about their choices. Emma followed his lead. Both children started to understand that their grandmother hadn't destroyed their family. Their parents' greed had. The trial began in March, 9 months after our kitchen confrontation. Kevin and Tiffany had hired separate attorneys, which told me everything I needed to know about the state of their marriage. Kevin's lawyer, David Chen, pursued a strategy of portraying his client as a man overwhelmed by financial pressure who had made poor judgments but never intended real harm. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury," Chen said in his opening statement, "this case is about a son who was trying to help his aging mother make responsible financial decisions. Were his methods perfect? No. Did he sometimes express frustration inappropriately? Yes. But criminal intent to defraud an elderly person? Absolutely not." Tiffany's attorney, Maria Santos, took a different approach, throwing Kevin under the bus while portraying Tiffany as a woman manipulated by her husband's desperation. Mrs. Tiffany Williams was dragged into this situation by a husband whose financial irresponsibility had created impossible pressures on their family, Santos argued. Any inappropriate comments she made were expressions of frustration, not criminal threats. The prosecution, led by Assistant District Attorney Robert Kim, had a simpler story to tell. This case is about greed. Two adults who saw an elderly family member as an obstacle to their financial goals and were willing to use any means necessary to overcome that obstacle, including threats of violence. My testimony lasted 2 days. I walked the jury through the recordings, explaining the context of each conversation and how it felt to hear my own family plotting against me. "What did you think?" "I thought they were planning to steal my freedom," I replied. And I was right. Kevin's testimony was more difficult to watch. My son, under oath and facing potential prison time, had to acknowledge the full scope of his and Tiffany's plan. "Did you and your wife discuss having your mother declared incompetent?" Kim asked. "Yes," Kevin admitted quietly. "For what purpose?" To gain control of her finances. Even though she had shown no signs of actual mental decline? Kevin's voice was barely audible. "Yes." Tiffany's testimony was combative. She maintained that everything they'd done was motivated by genuine concern. Even when confronted with recordings of her calculating my grocery costs and discussing my value as a rental income generator. "When you said, 'Old lottery winners have accidents all the time,' what did you mean?" Kim asked. "I meant they're vulnerable to scams and exploitation," Tiffany replied. "By people like you?" "Objection," Santos called out. "Sustained," the judge replied. But the point was made. The jury deliberated for 6 hours over 2 days. When they returned, their faces were grim. On the charge of conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, we find the defendant Kevin Williams guilty. I watched my son's shoulders slump as his fate was sealed. On the charge of conspiracy to commit financial elder abuse, we find the defendant Tiffany Williams guilty. On the additional charge of criminal threats against an elderly person, we find the defendant, Tiffany Williams, guilty. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Kevin received 14 months in minimum security federal prison, plus 3 years of supervised probation. Tiffany got 18 months plus probation because of the threat she'd made. Both would also have to complete 200 hours of community service at elder care facilities after their release. I felt no satisfaction watching them get led away in handcuffs. There was only profound sadness that our family had come to this. But the story had a broader impact than just our personal drama. The documentary, The Grandmother Who Fought Back, aired 6 months after the trial concluded. It sparked conversations about elder abuse across the country and led to legislative changes in several states. More importantly, it inspired other elderly people to fight back against family members who were exploiting them. I received hundreds of letters from people who recognized their own situations in my story. That's what led to the Dorothy Williams Foundation for Elder Justice. Using a portion of my lottery winnings, I established a nonprofit organization that provides legal assistance, temporary housing, and support services for elderly people trying to escape family financial abuse. In our first year, we helped 89 families. We paid for lawyers who challenged illegal conservatorships. We provided safe housing for elderly people who needed to escape abusive living situations. We lobbied for stronger laws and better enforcement. Most importantly, we showed elderly Americans that being old doesn't mean being powerless. Tyler and Emma visit me regularly now. Tyler is at Colorado State University studying business, determined to never repeat his parents' financial mistakes. Emma is a sophomore in high school and volunteers at the Foundation's office on weekends. Kevin and Tiffany were released after serving their full sentences. Federal prison doesn't allow early release for good behavior like state systems do. They divorced while in prison, each blaming the other for their situation. Kevin works at a small used car lot in Pueblo, making about a third of what he earned before. He lives in a modest apartment and pays child support to Tiffany, who moved back to her parents' house with Emma. We see each other occasionally at family events, Tyler's graduation, Emma's birthday parties, but our relationship will never recover. Too much trust was broken, too much damage done. Kevin sent me a letter last year, 2 years after his release, apologizing for everything and asking if we could rebuild our relationship. I wrote back with a single sentence. The Foundation is always looking for volunteers if you're interested in making amends by helping other families avoid what happened to us. He never responded. But Tyler did volunteer, and Emma plans to study elder law in college. My grandchildren learned from their parents' mistakes in ways that give me hope for the future. At 72, I've learned that family isn't always about blood relationships. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones most willing to hurt you. But sometimes, strangers become family when they help you fight battles you can't fight alone. The Dorothy Williams Foundation now operates in 12 states and has helped over 400 families escape elder abuse situations. We've successfully challenged 73 fraudulent conservatorships and helped elderly people recover more than $8 million in stolen assets. But the most important victory isn't measured in dollars or legal precedents. It's measured in dignity restored, in elderly people who learned that they're worth fighting for, in families who learned that respect isn't optional just because someone is old. I never wanted to become a poster child for elder rights. I just wanted justice for what my own family did to me. But sometimes personal justice becomes something bigger, a movement, a cause, a reason to keep fighting even when the personal battle is won. At 72, I discovered I was worth fighting for. Now I spend my days helping other elderly people learn the same lesson. And that, more than any lottery jackpot, feels like winning. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.